the better you're able to name your emotions, the better you'll be able to tame your emotions, the better you'll be able to regulate your emotions. And okay, I'm feeling triggered, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I want to get out right now, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling frustrated. And then the fourth step is choosing to see it differently. Okay, this child isn't trying to give me a hard time. This child's having a hard time. I'm in a state, he's in a state. Okay. And the fifth part is coming up with win solutions that work with everyone, right? And so the win solution here would be, all right, so what can I do here? Let me just acknowledge, let me see what's underneath the behavior and not just judge the behavior, but see what's underneath that and acknowledge that.
Hi, conscious parents. It's Carrie here, and I am here with a little info about raising our mindful kids. I've got some tips and tricks about breaking free of the box and becoming who you are and teaching your kids how to do that along the way. Join us. Hi there, conscious parents. Before we start today's episode, it's Carrie here, and I wanted to reach out to ask you guys for a quick favor. As a follower of our show, we would love for you to give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. It can be just a few words, that's it. And it really goes a long way with us, with the podcasting community on Apple or Spotify. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm so excited for you to hear today's message. Happy listening. Hi there, and welcome back. It's Carrie here, and I am so excited. I have a amazing guest here today. I have Mr. Chazz Lewis, who has a teaching background, and he is all over social media, inspiring teachers and leadership. He has a passion for inspiring and understanding and igniting curiosity and possibility in kids. That really stood out to me. I feel like that overlaps with Heart to Heart Parents and our mission here. So I'm so excited to have Mr. Chazz here today. Thank you, Mr. Chazz, for being here.
Happy to be here. Hope that I can help.
Yes. So I was just telling Mr. Chazz, we have a focus here. We talk a lot about raising gifted, spirited, and highly sensitive kids. I myself have a parent of a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son who fit those areas. And I would love to hear. There's a lot of these kids being born today and coming in with these passions and these zests for life. And it can be overwhelming at times for parents. And I just wanted to check in to see, what would you tell parents like me going through this process with our kids?
To really practice the pause as opposed to reacting. And I always say, try to stretch that reaction until it becomes a response. And a really important piece of that is pausing and regulating our own emotions because oftentimes, our children's behavior bring up emotions within us. And what we have a tendency to do is to react with those emotions as opposed to regulating our own emotions and not putting it on the children, but being able to hold space for their ideas, their disappointment, their frustration, their excitement without judging it. And that can be pretty hard.
Yes, I feel like that is a very hard one, especially sometimes highly sensitive kids can be being raised by highly sensitive adults as well. So I love the power in the pause. And it can feel sometimes pretty hard in raising these kids if we don't understand maybe their emotional states. I do a lot of education for a lot of our listeners, and I love looking at those posters right behind you for our people that are on video. He has the emotional states listed behind him. And would you be willing to share some of those pieces with us, Mr. Chaz?
Yeah, let's see if I can give you the elevator pitch, 5 minutes or less of
It's okay
the
if you go
brain
over.
state. Let's see. Let's see how I do. So we have our three brain states. What's important to know as I go into this is that the brain develops bottom up and it processes information bottom up. So let's start with the bottom, which is the survival state. And this is where our survival state is. And this is when the way that you can tell that a person is in a survival state is they're using their survival state skills, like fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And fawn is really that people pleasing survival state skill. It's ignoring your own needs to please somebody else. Imagine if someone put a gun to your head and said, "Give me all your money." You just like, "Please take it, just please don't hurt me." That's an example of fawning. Now, what triggers us to go into a survival state is a threat or a perceived threat. The threat doesn't even have to be real. Think about those times where maybe you're in the kitchen doing dishes or whatever you're doing, and someone walks in and you don't expect them to walk in, and you're like, "Whoa." You like get scared for a moment, you jump a little bit, and they just said, "Hey."
Yeah.
that was an actual real threat, but your body perceived it as a threat. And so you reacted. And it's also important to know that this part of the brain, the executive state, isn't fully developed. The capacity for it isn't fully developed till at least 25, 26.
Hmm.
And so back to the emotional state, the trigger for us getting into a survival state, the trigger for us getting a survival state is a threat or a perceived threat. Now, what helps us move up in the brain is a felt sense of safety. So that means if the child's body, brain, if they feel that felt sense of safety, then they can move up the brain to the emotional state. And this is where our verbal reactions tend to come from. And this is where the blaming, the name calling, the judgment, the you're not invited to my birthday party, the no, the you're not my real mom, or y'all don't have to listen to you, I don't care. But all of this comes from the emotion. That's the sign that we're in the emotional state. And us as adults get in the emotional state too. When you're driving, someone cuts you off, and I see that's a very common time where I see adults get in their emotional state because the trigger for us getting down to our emotional state is something in the world simply not going our way. That when we asked children to clean up and they were hoping to have more time playing with their toy or staying on their screen time or whatever they're doing, that is a time where they may likely get in an emotional state because something in the world did not go the way that they were hoping and the way that they were wanting to go. That is what triggers us to get into an emotional state. Now, what helps us move up from the emotional state to the executive state, where our best skills are, where we can learn more, where we can better at meeting these expectations that often leadership or parents have of us, the way that we can move up the brain is a connection, understanding, and a sense of belongingness. When the body and the brain can answer the question, do I feel understood? Do I have a sense of belongingness? Am I loved? Am I connected? If they can answer that question with an affirmative yes, they can move up from the emotional state to the executive state where they can be at their best. If when we're in a survival state or they're in a survival state, the question that the body brain is asking is, am I safe? And if they can answer that in the affirmative, yes, I have that felt sense of safety, then they can move up in the brain. And so that is a really helpful way, framework to just understand behavior a little bit better and know that when a child does use their survival state skills, they're fighting you or they're running away or whatever it is, or they're using their emotional state skills, they're back talking, they're saying no, they're saying I don't care, that is not a sign of you being a bad parent or them being a bad kid. It's just simply how the brain works.
Okay.
It's how the brain works. So we don't need to judge them or judge ourselves or shame them. Just understand, become aware that's just how the brain works. Now, in conscious discipline, there's a bunch of different strategies that we can talk about or are also in this book where you can learn better how to upshift children and yourself in the brain so that we can be more successful when we are navigating these challenging situations like setting and respecting boundaries, or maybe we see someone has something that we want, or maybe it's a situation where we're trying to encourage a child without labeling them and judging them, and that can be difficult in itself because we often have a tendency, especially for our kids who are gifted, we might say you're so smart, you're like the perfect little angel, and that actually is not as helpful as we might think it is.
Yes. That's so right on, spot on with what I've been finding with my kids when they're having a moment where they're having a breakdown and they're yelling, I hate you, mom. You told me I could do such and such thing today at this exact moment. And now you changed it, and not having that flexibility. But my kids want to be seen and heard. And I'm noticing before I used to try to explain to them what we're seeing. But now when I connect with them and I say, I see you, I hear that this is really hard. Is that the right thing? Am I doing the right
Yeah,
thing?
no,
Okay.
you're 100% on the right track. That that we often will, when they're in this emotional state, we try to logic and reason with them and try to give them all of explaining the why and sometimes try to do consequences and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When they're in an emotional state, they're not able to really access those executive skills that is required for them to do that perspective taking, see another person's perspective, and regulate their emotion. But if we help them feel understood and seen, and we use skills like empathy or choices or encouragement as opposed to just fixing them and problem solving in this moment, what ends up happening is they upshift in their brain to that executive state where they are able to take in the logic and the reasoning and the problem solving and what to do better next time. I'm going to give you a short little script that conscious discipline has. And I always say, here's a script, don't use it. But the script is helpful when you don't really have the words for it because it's
Sure.
all new and this isn't what we were raised with. And so this
Mm-hmm.
is our first language. So we often have to just get some language to get us started. And the language I would recommend it, you want it next time. And the you want it is the piece where you're acknowledging them and helping them feel understood and seen and acknowledging their desires. And then the next time is that, okay, this is how you can get what you want in a better way. This is how we can problem solve in a better way. So, for example, you wanted my attention. Next time, tap me on the shoulder like this. You wanted a turn. Next time, put your hand like this and say, turn, please. You wanted to, you really wanted to have more time outside. Next time, tell me you want more time or tell me how you feel. Next time, say, I'm really mad at you or whatever it is. It's the you want it to acknowledge what they are wanting out of the moment. And the next time is this is how you do it in a better way.
Hi there, Changemaker moms and dads. It's Carrie here. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. If there's any pieces of this episode that resonate with you, we would love for you to share it with a friend. A little helping hand goes a long way. We appreciate you tuning in, and here's more. Okay. That's really helpful. I love having a carrier phrase to use here and there because it does feel like I'm learning Spanish while I'm also parenting at the same time from how I was raised. So thank you for those carrier phrases, which I think are great to use in the first one or two times as we're going through that. And then we come up with our own version as we get used to it. So
Yeah.
I love that.
And again, the big piece is first just seeing them before you try to guide them. That's just the big piece, helping them feel seen
Okay.
first.
Okay. And then I have a question with that. If we're needing to do a consequence, so there's, for example, I asked my son, my 9-year-old, to clean up and he's in his zone, he's in his flow. And I just suddenly, we had to get our coats on and go. So I said, clean that up real fast. We got to go. I know the time strains, there's a lot of stress going on in that situation. But for example, he turned around and said, shut up, mom, which I don't know where we learned shut up, but it has been coming in lately. And I know in this, there's been a lot of positive parenting pieces and people don't understand consequences. So what are your feelings on consequences? What would it look like in that moment for an example for us?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. In that moment, not the time for consequences. And also, I want to acknowledge before I even talk about this piece that there are three kinds of consequences. There are natural consequences, logical consequences, and there are illogical consequences. And I'll touch more on that in just a moment. But regardless, the time to come in and say, will often react and be like, you don't talk to me this way. You need to listen to me. I'm the parent, you're the child. You don't say that to me. And so you're going to be grounded if you ever talk to me like that again, or you talk to me like that, you don't get to play with your screen time for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. If you want to talk about it, this is the reason why you're probably talking like this. So we go into all types
Mm-hmm.
of
Yep.
things. We lecture, and
Yep.
what often happens is this is so unfair. You never. Da, 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 da. We get into this power struggle, and we get into this, and really, what happened was you told your child to clean up, and really, I'm going to actually go back even a little bit further here because the other piece that we have to recognize is our state dictates their state. So the child
Mm,
can't be in a higher state than us. So if we're in an emotional state, they're likely going to be in an emotional state. If we're in a survival state, they're likely going to be in a survival state. If we're in an executive state, we have a shot at helping them move up to an executive state so they could solve the problem or meet our expectations or whatever. In this moment, it sounds like you were probably started off in an emotional state where you probably weren't using your best skills because things didn't go your way, right?
mm-hmm.
Whatever happened,
Yeah.
you ended up being in a rush. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
have, and by the way, one of the executive state skills is time management. So and
Mm,
it seems like we were lacking some skills here in this moment too,
yeah.
right? And so we came into this moment in this emotional state. We're trying to make up for our own lacking skills. And we're like, hey, you meet me where I'm at because I'm losing and I'm late right now. So you need to rush and be done with what you're doing right now and shift your attention very quickly and do what I care about and forget what you're caring about. And from the emotional state, and again, this is not just the words that we're saying. This is also tone and body language that's also communicating our state and communicating to them and also influencing their state. So we're in this emotional state, trying to get ready to go out the door. And then the child reacts from his emotional state, right? Things aren't going his way. He wanted to do more of whatever he was doing. He wanted to stay focused on what he was focused on, and you were trying to shift him and trying to rush him out the door. So he reacts from his emotional state. And so what happens because things didn't go away? He does the verbal reaction. He said, "Shut up, mom." Now,
Mm-hmm.
we can stay down this emotional state and stay in and open up this power struggle that they've invited us to and focus on their behavior and all that stuff. Or we could see what's underneath that. We could pause. We can move ourselves up to the executive state and say, okay, hey, this is a moment where I have a choice in how I handle this. I could yell and react, or I could respond, see where he's coming from, and guide him from there. And meet either I can meet him where he's at, or I can expect him to meet me where I'm at. And if we choose to meet this child where he's at, we are going to pause because we're likely triggered. We're probably already triggered. We're probably extra triggered from when we heard the shut up. All this stuff is coming up from us, all of our mental models, all the stuff of, you shouldn't let him talk to you that way, how you were raised is coming up. And I know if that would have happened, if I would have said that to my
Mm-hmm.
mom, I would have been smacked in the mouth, or I would have been X, Y, and all this stuff is coming up, right? So we have to regulate that. We have to recognize that we're triggered. I'm going to quickly go over the 5 steps of self-regulation so I can answer your question. But this book goes so much deeper into it. It'll teach you how to go through the 5 steps of self-regulation and also teach you how to teach your child to go through the 5 steps of self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So recognize that you're triggered, pause and do something to calm yourself. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and breathe so that you can actually get the benefits of breathing, which means your belly needs to be expanding on your in breath through your nose, and your out breath needs to be longer than your in breath. And even with that one breath, I feel a little bit calmer. And
Me
you
too.
might even be able to notice the difference in my voice and the place that I'm talking just from that one breath. The next step is I feel, recognizing what you're feeling, recognizing, it's the whole thing of what Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel talk about name entertainment. And also Brene Brown talks about it. The idea is the better you're able to name your emotions, the better you'll be able to tame your emotions, the better you'll be able to regulate your emotions. And okay, I'm feeling triggered. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I want to get out right now and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling frustrated. And then the fourth step is choosing to see it differently. Okay, this child isn't trying to give me a hard time. This child's having a hard time. I'm in a state, he's in a state. Okay. And the fifth part is coming up with win solutions that work with everyone, right? And so the win solution here would be, all right, so what can I do here? Let me just acknowledge, let me see what's underneath the behavior and not just judge the behavior, but see what's underneath that and acknowledge that. It seems like you really wanted to spend more time on your game. It seems like you really want to finish it and you feeling upset because I'm rushing you out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that. That's must be a really hard moment for you. And likely they're going to either continue expressing how they feel and just hear that, pause and hear that, help them feel seen and heard, understood. It's hard to back talk and be in a power struggle with someone who's just listening to you and hearing you and helping you feel seen. And when they do feel seen and understood and heard, and yeah, you really want, yeah, I just really, you're always rushing me and you never taking consideration what I have to do. And I'm trying to finish this level and you never let me finish this level. Yeah, you really wanted me to help you finish this level. Okay. When you want more time, say, Mom, may I please have more time? Can we please have more time? Can you give me 2 minutes? May I finish this? Whatever the problem solving, whatever you want him to do or her to do in that moment instead next time.
Mhm.
And I would even take a moment. Okay, so let's practice this. Let's role play it in the moment. And I know, meanwhile, you're getting later and later for your appointment. And you can choose to try to rush them out and you can go that route. And I
Mhm.
imagine what's likely going to happen, what tends to happen is you're dealing with that all
Yep.
the way to the
Yep.
car, on the appointment, after the
Yep.
appointment,
Yep.
late. And next time when you want to get out the door, you're going to be dealing with it again. Right? You
Mhm.
didn't really teach them another skill of how to what to do better next time. And so if you don't take the time out to practice or and to kind of talk about help them feel seen and heard and then practice what to do instead, then in the long run, you're going to be spending more time dealing with the same thing over and over and over again. Not to say that they're going to do it perfectly the first time that you practice with them, because you're not going to do this perfectly the first time you practice this and change, you try to change your behavior. We're all learning, we're all on this learning journey together. So,
Mhm.
it's helping that child feel seen first and then helping them figure out what to do and take a moment to practice, literally go through the motions of, okay, I'm going to pretend like I'm rushing you, like I'm in a state right now, and you practice telling me what you need. And then you go through that and you practice that. And then they have that skill, a little bit more practice than what they did before. And there's other times that you can practice this skill, but that is how we can handle that moment in a way where it goes from what could be a power struggle that disconnects us and breaks down communication. It actually becomes a teachable moment that increases communication and increases connection.
That was an amazing answer. I have to give you props, Mr. Chaz, because I kept, as I was creating that scenario, I kept adding on all of these pieces that was making my brain in the example. It was putting me farther more toward the survival state, right, as a mom. So I appreciate you going through all of those pieces because I did make that a very complicated scenario in that example. I would love to mention that the books that Chaz is talking about, I will include in the show notes. So that way we have the access to those as well. So if you would mind talking about the three consequences that you mentioned at the beginning,
Yes.
because I think that is a huge part of this conscious parenting piece. Conscious parents were I think we're guided in one direction so often and we think we know what we're doing, but really, I think reviewing consequences is so important for today's parents.
Yeah, yes. And consequences are something, even with the talking more about natural consequences and logical consequences. So in conscious discipline, what is really cool and one of the things I love about the framework the most is that it actually color codes the different skills that
Okay.
you use that coordinate with the different brain states.
Oh,
And the skills for
great.
the uh higher for the lower brain states can be used for the higher brain states, but the skills for the lower brain states are unlikely to be helpful for the higher brain states or for the lower brain states. So let me actually show you, talk a little bit more about what I'm talking about. And then I promise you, I'm going to go to the consequences. But this is a little bit foundation for the consequences and when to use them and how to use them.
Can I pause you for a second? I
Yeah.
am realizing as a mom of raising two E kids, there are so many times in our day where I am as a mom living in that emotional state. And
Yes.
recognizing that as a parent is so important.
Very important that it's not just the children who are in the state, it's us too. And it starts with us. And again, our state dictates their state. So it's important for us to recognize when we're in a state, do that first step of recognizing when we get triggered so that we can regulate enough to actually help the child regulate and respond and use their best skills and learn something different. And so these are the 7 skills. Composure and assertiveness are the survival state skills. Those are helpful for all of the brain states, no matter what state. And composure is like our own self-regulation, and assertiveness is about clear communication and boundaries and setting limits. And that is what assertiveness is about. Now we have our emotional state skills. encouragement, choices, and empathy. Now, encouragement, choices, and empathy are helpful when a child is in an emotional state or executive state, but unlikely to be helpful when a child is in a survival state. So sometimes you might be trying to give, sometimes we use a lot of really great skills, but at the wrong time. We might try to give choices to a child in a survival state and something that's not going to be very helpful.
Mhm.
Now, positive intent, which is really the skill to turn moments of conflict into moments of learning and consequences, or skills that are helpful in the executive state, but unlikely to be helpful when a child is in an emotional state or survival state. So that being said, consequences, right? I wouldn't even really think about using consequences when a child is still in the emotional state or survival state. So that's the first thing. And that's part of what I was just talking about of just empathizing, help the child feel seen before you talk about what to do differently next time. Now, here are the three kinds of consequences. You have your natural consequences that happen without adult intervention. You have logical consequences that have three requirements: that they're reasonable, related to the thing that's happening, and respectful. And then you have illogical consequences or punishments that don't meet those three requirements of reasonable, related, and respectful. Now let's shift to talk a little bit more about what these three different and give like a little bit of an example. Natural consequences, for example, a child is running around inside and they trip over something and they hurt their knee. And that is a the natural consequence without our intervention is they tripped over something and they hurt themselves. Now, sometimes we could turn this into an illogical consequence when we are like, see, I told you so. I told you not to run in the household. How many times do I have to tell you? If you would have listened to me, it wouldn't have, right? We're just venting at it's not helpful. We're just venting at that. We're putting our own emotions, we're blaming, that's coming from our emotional state. And that's not very helpful. That's not helping them learn anything at all. Instead, what we could do in those moments is they trip, oh, it looks you got hurt, or come up and say something happened, and then yeah, I tripped and I fell and I got hurt. It's like, yeah, that does look like it hurts, and we comfort them and hug them and help them feel seen and make sure that they're okay. And then when they start to regulate a little bit more and feel seen, you can see a shift in their body language if you're really noticing. Then that's when we can say something like, oh, look, what do you think that we could do better next time so that you don't get hurt? Right? And start the thinking process about what to do. Oh, I could walk inside or I can push in the chair, whatever. Oh, yeah, that's right. We could do that. Natural consequences uh, motivate children to learn new skills.
Mhm.
And we'll come back to that. Now, logical consequences, reasonable, related, and respectful. Let's start with reasonable. Let's say they don't clean up. Unreasonable would be, since you can't clean up your toys, I'm throwing your toys in the trash. Or you're not going to get away with these toys for the rest of the week or whatever. That's not reasonable. Related. They're not cleaning up. So you no screen time. You're not going to have any screen time. Or you're not going to have outside time
Mhm.
because you're not doing that's not related. That's not going to be helpful. And respectful is also has a lot to do with the words we're using, the tone we're using, our approach, right? If you wouldn't want someone to talk to you, your boss or your partner to talk to you about a mistake in this way, then that's maybe a hint or a clue that it may not be respectful, right? If we're saying something like um, maybe yelling or lecturing or saying something like that you need to do your homework. You came here and you didn't do your homework. What's wrong with you? And we could even have the reasonable
Mhm.
piece in there or in the related piece here. But if we're not respectful in how
Mhm.
we are approaching it, then it is going to go into the punishment and logical consequences realm as opposed to staying in a logical consequences realm. Because when we start all of that stuff, we'd actually distract them from actually learning from the moment because we're so busy putting our emotions on them. And here's what's important to remember here in terms of when to use them and how to use them. One important piece here, or really the impact of them, or what these different kinds of consequences do.
Mhm.
Natural consequences motivate children to learn new skills.
Okay.
Logical consequences motivate children to use skills that they already have.
Mm.
So if they're trying to use logical consequences, but they don't have the skill, then let's say you're saying something like they have a ball inside the house and they're bouncing the ball in the house, and maybe the rule is to bounce the ball in the playroom or outside.
Yeah.
And you maybe it's a 3-year-old and you're saying, yeah, bounce, we give them the ball and they're bouncing it wherever they're bouncing in the living room with this glass. And we then just we take we maybe we say, hey, I'm gonna take away the ball and we're going to maybe play. And then you can have another chance to play with it tomorrow, or you have another chance to play with it later. We'll try again later. And so you give them the ball back later, but you haven't helped them with the skill of learning what that boundary is, and maybe through a visual, and they're still struggling, like they don't have the impulse control not to bounce the ball
Mhm.
when the ball is available to them in the living room. Then you're going to be doing that logical consequence over and over again, and all that's going to happen is just
Yeah.
going to continue to disconnect you from your child, making it harder for you to teach them this thing that you're trying to teach them, where the ball bounces, and all the other things that you want to teach them, because connection primes the brain for willingness. And it's that willingness that is going to inspire them to do the hard work to learn a new skill. Because at the end of the day, yeah, I know you're doing a lot of work as a parent, but so is that child is doing a lot of work to learn that new skill, right? Just like that whole piece I talked about of just when you're feeling triggered or they say, shut up, mom, and I'm telling you to respond empathetically, not judge the behavior, respond, helping them feel understood. That's going to be hard for you to do, especially in the beginning. It's going to take practice for you to do, and know that you're not going to be perfect at it and you're going to stumble over that. And just like you're learning how to help your child feel seen so that you can guide them, they're learning all of the things that in the executive skills, all the executive skills, which are attention, time management, organization, prioritization,
Mm.
impulse control, flexibility, time management, emotional regulation, just to name a few of these executive state skills that we want them to use. To wrap it all up, create that sense of safety, connection, understanding, and belongingness. And when those things are present, you'll be able to actually teach them so much more for them to be successful in the future.
Love that. I think so many adults are actually having challenges in these executive functions ourselves. We're all working in survival mode a lot of time. So I love what you're saying and I love these pieces. Are all of these they're in the conscious discipline book as well, what you're describing? That's all part of.
Yes,
Okay.
and so much more. And I quick shameless plug here,
Sure.
because
Sure.
I 35, however long we did this is not enough for me to explain this whole framework for you, but this is such a transformational framework. It is so helpful and it lays things out so well, and it's based
Yeah.
off of brain science and it's still evolving. This book breaks down the whole framework, all of what I talked about, all the different skills. This book actually has a different chapter for each of those skills, and it
Okay.
breaks it down to do lots and lots of very practical strategies that you can use. It's called
Okay.
Conscious Discipline Building Resilient Classrooms. And I know it says classroom, but it's so helpful for parents as well.
Mhm.
And you can get anything off the Conscious Discipline website using my code Mr. Chaz 24, and you'll get free shipping off anything on the website. And the other one that I really want to gear your attention towards is Managing Emotional Mayhem, the 5 steps of
Mm.
self-regulation. This book teaches you how to self-regulate and teaches you how to teach your child to self-regulate. And those are the two big things that if you're really looking to continue this journey and learn more about what I talked about, and you love the videos that I share on social media when I'm talking
Yeah.
about the brains and do all that stuff, those are the books that I would recommend starting with. In particular, start with this one first because it has the whole framework in it.
Okay. I love that. And I love the name. I think conscious is huge in our industry and it's growing, which is awesome. People are becoming more aware. Do you feel like this conscious discipline that it's neuroaffirming for kids that have, or for parents that have neurodiverse kids? Have you seen positive changes? Great.
100%. And actually, the creator of it part of what inspired her to create conscious discipline is because she had a traumatic brain injury when
Mm,
she was younger.
wow.
She's much older. She recently retired. She's like in the 60s or maybe pushing 70 now.
Yeah.
But she had a traumatic brain injury and she
Wow.
was learning how, like, how do I help myself? How can I learn
Mhm.
in a better way? And through that process, she was also learning how children learn and the things that were helpful for her and her learning
Mhm.
were also helpful for children,
Yeah.
also helpful neurodivergent children.
Amazing. That sounds perfect. I think that it's really important to have that piece as well. So, thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful tools and tricks. And I know we compressed, just like your Instagram videos, we compressed a lot of info in a very short amount of time. So, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here with us today, Mr. Chazz.
Thank you for having me and fun. And please reach out, Mr. Chaz, on all social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. Come find me and come along the journey.
Yes. And I don't know if you mentioned your podcast, but it's amazing. I love it. That's one of the ways I
Oh,
first
yep.
started connecting.
Learning Curve with Mr. Chaz on all
Yes.
podcasting platforms. Yes.
Thank you. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a little few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.